Drop the weapon. Get on the ground now. The SWAT officer bellowed, his rifle aimed squarely at Melissa Mel Hammond, a dignified, elderly Marine Gunnery Sergeant. She stood frozen in her own doorway, her only weapon, the leash of her golden retriever service dog, Valor. Before Mel could fully process the chaotic shouts, a searing jolt of electricity ripped through her. She collapsed. Valor barked frantically beside her as the world swam and then went black. They'd gotten the wrong house. 6 minutes later, as Mel lay dazed on her porch, the suburban street erupted. Not with more police sirens, but with the heavy rumble of military vehicles. The National Guard had arrived, and they weren't there for a parade. If you believe no hero deserves such a horrifying mistake, type justice below. Melissa Hammond, or Mel as her few close friends knew her, was a woman who found profound solace in the quiet rhythms of her suburban life and the unwavering companionship of Valor, her highly trained service dog. A retired Marine Gunnery Sergeant with multiple combat tours that spanned decades and continents, Mel now lived a life of unassuming dignity. Her modest house, with its meticulously tended garden, was her sanctuary. Though the echoes of war still sometimes visited her in the dead of night, Valor was always there, a warm, reassuring presence, specifically trained to rouse her from nightmares and ground her during moments of intense anxiety. In her neighborhood, Mel was known as a quiet, kind widow, always keeping to herself but offering a friendly nod to anyone she passed. She maintained her lawn with military precision, flew the American flag with pride on every holiday, and embodied the kind of humble patriotism that rarely drew attention. Her casual attire, often a simple polo shirt and worn jeans, belied a steely resolve and a history of service that most could only imagine. Despite her distinguished career, she preferred the simple, grounded existence of a civilian. Her connection with Valor was a testament to the profound bond between a veteran and her loyal companion, a bond built on trust, understanding, and quiet devotion. That Tuesday morning began like any other. Mel had just savored her last sip of coffee and was about to take Valor for their routine morning walk when the peace of her quiet street shattered. A cacophony of shouting pierced the air, followed by the violent screech of tires. Confused, Mel cautiously opened her front door, Valor faithfully by her side on his leash, only to be met with a terrifying sight, her front yard swarming with heavily armed men in tactical gear. A full SWAT team, weapons raised, was converging on her house. Police. Search warrant. Hands where I can see them. The commands overlapped, aggressive, and disorienting. Mel, a woman trained in de-escalation and clear communication under extreme stress, instinctively raised her empty hands. Her mind raced, trying to assess the threat, trying to comprehend the catastrophic error that was clearly unfolding before her. Valor, though trained for calm, sensed his handler's sudden, profound distress. A low, protective growl rumbled in his chest, and he stood firmly by Mel's leg, a silent sentinel. "She's got a dog." "Aggressive animal," one officer shouted, his voice tight with adrenaline. "Secure the subject," another commanded. Mel tried to speak, to explain the obvious truth. "Wait, this is my home. There's a mistake. My dog is a service animal." But her words were lost in the chaotic shouts and the adrenaline-fueled tension. She saw the ominous red dot of a laser sight dance across her chest. She saw the unyielding, masked faces, the glinting barrels of rifles. She knew this level of force was meant for hardened criminals, not an elderly female veteran standing in her own doorway with her loyal service dog. Before Mel could utter another word, before she could even fully comprehend the horrific wrongness of it all, a young officer, clearly amped up and misinterpreting Valor's protective stance as aggression, yelled, "Taser! Taser! Taser!" and fired. The barb struck Mel squarely in the chest. An agonizing, paralyzing jolt of electricity coursed through her body. Her legs buckled violently beneath her. She crashed to the porch, the leash slipping from her spasming hand. Valor, now barking wildly, a mixture of fear and absolute fury, tried desperately to shield Mel, nudging her face, then barking defiantly at the advancing officers, a beacon of loyalty in the chaos. Mel lay there, her body convulsing uncontrollably, the world a disorienting blur of searing pain and profound confusion. The sharp, metallic smell of ozone stung her nostrils, a sickening reminder of the assault. She heard an officer yell, "Dogs loose!" Potential threat. Her heart pounded a frantic, irregular rhythm against her ribs. She tried to call out to protect Valor, to assure them he was harmless, but her voice wouldn't work. Her muscles locked in agonizing, relentless contractions, trapping her words, trapping her in the nightmare. This wasn't combat, where the enemy was clear and the purpose defined. This was her front porch. This was a mistake that felt like the deepest betrayal, a violation of everything she had served to protect. As Mel slowly, painstakingly regained a semblance of control over her twitching limbs, the SWAT team swarmed her small house. She heard doors crashing open, the sickening sound of furniture being overturned, the shouted commands of "clear" echoing from within. She was roughly handcuffed, still dazed, her heart pounding erratically from the lingering effects of the taser. Valor was eventually subdued, not with further force, but by a more experienced officer who, seeing the clear markings of a service vest beneath the dog's agitated state, used calming commands and gentle reassurance. Mel was then unceremoniously dragged to her feet and made to sit on her own porch steps, surrounded by armed men, a prisoner in her own home. She tried again to explain, her voice raw and hoarse. "You've got the wrong house," she rasped, her throat aching. "I'm Melissa Hammond, Gunnery Sergeant retired. This is 121, Oak Street. Who are you looking for?" The SWAT team leader, Captain Miller, finally approached, a crumpled warrant held loosely in his hand. His gaze was distant, his focus entirely on the document. He meticulously compared the address on the warrant, 123, Oak Street, to Mel's house number, 121, and then to the house next door, which was nearly identical in appearance. A flicker of doubt crossed Miller's face, quickly morphing into dawning horror. He'd briefed his team, based on an outdated informant tip that hadn't been cross-verified with newer, more accurate intelligence pointing to the actual target at 123. It was a catastrophic, almost unbelievable error, an oversight that had just culminated in the assault of an innocent citizen. "My God!" Miller muttered under his breath, loud enough for Mel to hear. The words were laced with a mixture of disbelief and utter dread. He quickly barked orders to his men, "Secure the animal. Cease the search of this home immediately." Valor, sensing the shift in tone, whimpered softly beside Mel, gently licking her hand, his earlier fury replaced by a profound sadness. But the damage was irrevocably done. Mel's humble house, her sanctuary, was trashed, her dignity violated, her body still aching from the taser's electric embrace. Valor, her steadfast companion, was traumatized, trembling slightly at her side. Miller, his face now a mask of profound chagrin, approached Mel. His demeanor had shifted entirely from the rigid tactical commander to a deeply remorseful officer. "Ms. Hammond." "Ma'am," he began, his voice strained, "there's been a significant error. We had a warrant for a high-risk narcotics trafficker believed to be at this address. It seems our intelligence was flawed. The target is likely next door, at 123, Oak Street." Mel simply stared at him, her eyes, though weary, burning with a quiet indignation. The pain, the raw humiliation, the sheer, mind-numbing incompetence of it all washed over her in waves. "Flawed intelligence," she repeated, her voice thin but imbued with a chilling calm. "You tossed an old soldier on her own porch because of flawed intelligence. A woman who spent her life defending this nation from real threats, only to be assaulted by her own countrymen in her own home." Her words hung in the air, a devastating indictment that no apology could immediately erase. Miller flinched, visibly recoiling from the silent power of her accusation. Before Captain Miller could respond, before any further stammered apologies or hollow explanations could be offered, a new sound cut through the suburban quiet. It wasn't the familiar, escalating wail of police sirens. This was deeper, more resonant, a profound vibration that seemed to shake the very foundations of the street. It was the unmistakable rumble of heavy military vehicles approaching at speed, a sound that spoke not of local law enforcement, but of something far more significant, far more organized, far more authoritative. The first olive-drab Humvee turned onto Oak Street, its tires biting at the asphalt, followed closely by two more, then a larger troop transport vehicle, its imposing frame dwarfing the civilian cars lining the curb. They didn't just arrive, they deployed with a practiced efficiency that made the SWAT team's earlier chaotic entry look amateurish, almost clumsy. Soldiers in full combat gear, carrying M4 rifles with a silent, disciplined precision, disembarked quickly and quietly. They moved with an almost unsettling synchronization, establishing a perimeter around the entire block, including both Mel's house and the neighboring 123, Oak Street, where the actual suspect was supposed to be. The sheer scale and speed of their operation were breathtaking. The SWAT officers, still recovering from their own botched raid, looked on, stunned and profoundly confused. Their authority was suddenly, unequivocally, superseded. They were no longer in command, they were merely spectators. Neighbors, who had been peering nervously from behind curtains, their earlier curiosity now morphing into bewildered awe, began to emerge, whispering among themselves. This was no longer just a police raid gone wrong. This was something else entirely, something unprecedented and deeply unsettling. From the lead Humvee, a figure emerged who radiated an almost palpable aura of command. He was older, his bearing ramrod straight, reflecting decades of unwavering discipline. He wore the crisp, impeccably tailored duty uniform of a major general, two gleaming stars on his collar catching the morning sunlight. It was Major General Samuel Armitage, commander of the State National Guard. As fate, or perhaps a higher power, would have it, General Armitage was also Melissa Hammond's former battalion commander from her last active duty assignment. He was the man Mel, with her characteristic bravery and selflessness, had pulled from a burning armored personnel carrier years ago during a brutal deployment overseas, saving his life under heavy enemy fire. General Armitage had been in the air, en route to a state disaster preparedness drill, when an urgent, scrambled message had reached his helicopter. A highly decorated retired Marine Gunnery Sergeant, Melissa Hammond, had been mistakenly tossed and her home raided by local SWAT during a botched warrant service. The governor, alerted by a frantic call from a well-connected veterans advocacy group, a call that Mel had managed to make via a quick text to a friend just before the tossing, had authorized immediate National Guard intervention. The directive was clear: secure the situation and ensure the welfare of a distinguished veteran whose rights had been egregiously violated. General Armitage recognized Mel's name instantly, the name of a true warrior and a loyal friend. He had diverted his flight without a moment's hesitation and mobilized the nearest quick reaction force, determined to set things right. General Armitage strode directly towards Mel's porch, his expression a tight mask of cold fury. His eyes, usually discerning and fair, now held a dangerous glint. They took in Mel's disheveled state, the still twitching remnants of the taser barbs clinging to her simple polo shirt, the trashed interior of her home visible through the open doorway, and Valor, cowering protectively beside her, his soft whimper echoing the fear in his eyes. He completely ignored SWAT Captain Miller, who attempted to intercept him with stammered explanations and apologies. The captain's words died in his throat as the general's gaze swept over him, dismissing him as if he were an annoying fly. General Armitage knelt beside Mel, his voice, usually booming with authority, was now gentle but firm, laced with deep concern. "Mel, Melissa, it's Sam Armitage. Are you all right, old friend?" Mel looked up, her eyes clearing slightly as she recognized the general, a flicker of her old gunnery sergeant's resilience returning to them. "Sam, General," she rasped, a wry, almost pained smile touching her lips. "Bit of a rough morning. Mistaken identity, they say." Armitage's gaze swept over the taser wire, still clinging to Mel's shirt, a stark symbol of the egregious error. Then, his eyes, now like chips of ice, fixed on Captain Miller. "Mistaken identity? Armitage stood, his full height and the weight of his rank seeming to physically diminish the SWAT commander, making him shrink under the intense scrutiny. "Captain, you tossed a decorated gunnery sergeant, a woman who has faced enemy fire without flinching, on her own property. All because your team couldn't read a house number correctly." Miller, visibly flustered, began to explain about high-risk warrants, informant intel, officer safety protocols. But the general cut him off with a sharp, decisive gesture. "Officer safety is paramount, Captain. So is competent intelligence, proper procedure, and de-escalation. What I see here is a catastrophic failure on all fronts, resulting in the assault of a United States Marine Corps veteran and the terrorizing of her service animal." He gestured to the National Guard soldiers, who now stood like immovable sentinels, securing the entire area with unwavering discipline. "My men will take it from here. Your team will withdraw now. Leave all evidence and reports with my executive officer. The state police and the Department of Justice will be conducting a full investigation into this incident." Captain Miller, utterly outranked and outmaneuvered, could only nod, his face grim with the weight of his undeniable failure. The SWAT team, humbled and sullen, began a quiet, humiliated withdrawal under the watchful, unyielding eyes of the National Guard. The aftermath for Melissa Hammond was a whirlwind, but one that was unequivocally supportive. General Armitage personally oversaw her immediate care and the comprehensive restoration of her home. A National Guard medic was already by Mel's side, meticulously checking her vitals and assessing any lingering effects from the taser. "Valor needs checking too," Mel managed to say, her concern for her loyal service dog overriding her own discomfort. "Absolutely," Armitage agreed, nodding to a military veterinarian who promptly arrived to examine the trembling golden retriever. Valor, after a thorough checkup, was given a clean bill of health, his tail soon wagging cautiously as he realized he was safe. General Armitage then made another pivotal call, this one directly to the governor's office. He updated the governor on the situation, emphasizing the severe nature of the error and the distinguished service of Ms. Hammond. He requested immediate state-level intervention to not only fully repair Mel's home but also to provide any necessary long-term support she might require. As a practical and symbolic gesture, a team of National Guard engineers was dispatched. Under the guise of a training exercise, they meticulously repaired her damaged door, thoroughly cleaned her house, and even fixed a leaky faucet that Mel had been meaning to get to for months. The state governor, facing immense public pressure after the news quickly broke, issued a swift and unequivocal public apology to Mel, broadcast widely. He unequivocally condemned the SWAT team's egregious error and promised a thorough review of their procedures. Captain Miller and the young officer who fired the taser were immediately placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. Their careers, undeniably, were likely over, their actions serving as a stark warning about the consequences of unchecked authority and flawed intelligence. The city, anticipating the inevitable repercussions, faced a significant lawsuit. It was quickly settled in Mel's favor, with a substantial sum awarded. However, true to her character, Mel insisted that the vast majority of the funds be channeled directly to veterans' charities and service dog training programs. She didn't seek personal profit from her ordeal. What she truly desired was accountability, a systemic change to prevent such a betrayal from ever happening to another veteran, another innocent citizen. The National Guard presence remained on Oak Street for the rest of the day, a visible, imposing symbol of a promise kept, a line drawn against injustice. Neighbors, who had watched the unfolding drama with a mix of fear and bewilderment, now approached Mel with newfound respect. They brought her food, offered words of support, their earlier apprehension replaced by a profound understanding and admiration for the quiet veteran who lived among them. The community had witnessed firsthand the potential for authority to err, but also the powerful, restorative force of true leadership and integrity. General Armitage visited Mel several times in the following weeks, ensuring her continued well-being and the complete restoration of her peace. "You know, Mel," he said during one visit, as Valor snoozed contentedly at their feet in her now restored living room, "sometimes the system fails the very people it's sworn to protect. It's a harsh truth. But it's our job, those of us who still wear the uniform or remember what it stands for, to step up. To make it right. Mel, sitting in her repaired home, a new sense of security settling around her like a warm blanket, simply nodded. The faint taser marks would eventually fade, the initial fear would gradually lessen, becoming a distant echo. What remained, however, was a profound and unwavering knowledge, even in the darkest, most mistaken moments, there were still those who remembered. There were still those who would answer the call, driven by an unshakable sense of duty and loyalty. And for them, the sacred military principle of, "no man left behind," was more than just a motto. It was a tangible, operational imperative, a guiding star. Because when a hero is wronged, sometimes it takes the quiet thunder of true authority, the unwavering strength of those who live by a code of honor, to restore not just order, but honor itself. If you believe accountability matters and our veterans and their service animals deserve nothing less than our utmost respect and protection, please comment below and share your thoughts.